James Turrells is known for his works that aim to affect the viewer's experience and perception of art through the medium of light and the space it inhabits. With this in mind, he hopes to create an environment of meditation and submission. Turrell, having been raised a Quaker with their tradition for silent prayer, reflects that as much in his works. Erected in 1992 at the Sculpture Garden of the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, this unassuming structure from the outside appears as a simple cube with an opening at the top. However, visitors, upon reaching the stone, rough entrance and passing through the corridor, find themselves in a serene, smooth geometric room measuring 700 centimeters in length by 1,000 centimeters in width and height, and accompanied by a bench that follow the walls. Whilst the acoustics in the room and immensity would be something to gawk at, it becomes clear that the room itself has no desire to be scrutinized, interpreted, or become the subject of one's opinion, as it merely seeks to act as a conduit for the seeming ineffability of the sky and the light entering to greet the people in the form of shifting polygon shapes, as if to imitate speech and form. And in fact, it's the shape of the room that allows the light to physically materialize and speaks syncretically to the time of day. There is a hole saturated with color occupying the space of a square on a wall, which from a certain angle can be perceived as an innocuous, flat square projection. It's sometimes red, violet, pink, blue, among other colors. This disruption in the until now impersonal blank wall carries an air of eeriness. In the middle, a narrow path lay to guide you down a vacuous space, engulfed in an intense light of color, to the point where the dimensions of the room, although still visible, are blurred, altering one's perception to experience the infinite. It is here that Turrell orchestrates what is known as the Ganzfeld effect, which is when the lack of visual stimulation causes the brain to amplify neural noises as it attempts to make sense of the resulting sensory gaps. It is here that the theme of submission and celestial magnitude makes itself present in the form of color without depth, infinite space with no concept of time in a measured room with no less history and intentionality. Turrell brings us closer to God, abstracted from our usual understandings, and uses the light to steer us. Flying over the sky of Flagstaff, Arizona, observing the scenic landscape, Rodin Crater comes into view. Turrell's nearly 50-year-long magnum opus, located in the shell of a now-dead volcano, this multifaceted installation synthesizes the use of land and light in the structure, conceptualized as the end result of his development of what he calls autonomous structures, which are a series of models or structures created in a way that uses its surroundings and shape to amplify the viewer's experience of light. This is best reflected in the installation's inclusion of multiple chambers and tunnels that feed into Rodin, to fully realize his concept for a temple of light divided into multiple parts of a greater whole. This is best illustrated by the East Portal, which acts as a refractor telescope at the end of which is a circle of light. As you move up towards the sun and moon chamber, Turrell plays with our perception again, and the corridor becomes a keyhole, leading us closer towards the source, which is in fact an eclipse. The egg-shaped entrance perhaps implying a sort of cycle of rebirth and renewal as the day changes into night, and the staircase beckoning the viewers to enter a new life, likewise to a birth canal when exiting the static, unchanging womb, continuing with the theme of nature and infinity through the use of perception. It is here that we come to understand that these structures have more in common with a place of worship, an intermediary between the congregation and their faith. Just as a cathedral or mosque drive perception through its ornate decor and complex intentional design aimed at capturing meaning for its audience in a bid to understand the sublime nature of God, so does Turrell's project seek to reach that same conclusion, however with an audience actively conceptualizing their own faith in whatever form they may perceive. As Valerie Gonzalez writes in The Chimeras Hall in the Alhambra and James Turrell's Space That Sees, a comparison of aesthetic and phenomenology, Sensory perception is therefore the genuine producer of meaning in the aesthetic experience by broaching the more elementary corporeal consciousness of the living being in the physical world. In Turrell's case, he moves all the physical aesthetic from what would be traditionally seen in these sorts of spaces, leaving it clean and plain as a canvas, allowing for the audience to actively commune with nature, eternity, and God through contemplation and the physical act of seeing the light move on the walls, change color, and hopefully how we perceive it in its purest form, and not take it for granted. It is that which is the real art, which is the human capacity to experience light and space in altered modes of perceiving.